Hello and welcome to another episode of the Woolly Ramblings podcast. My name is Nicole and this is a video podcast where I chat about my fiber crafting, primarily knitting and spinning, though sometimes other fiber crafts that I dabble in as well. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for joining me again today, and if you're new, welcome. I hope you will enjoy today's episode. Today's episode is pretty heavily focused on knitting. I have not been doing any spinning since I last chatted with you, which was like 6 weeks ago, I think, which is a lot longer than I intended to space these podcasts out. But the weeks just kind of have flown by as summer has gotten started, so I hope you've all been enjoying your summer. It is pretty warm today. I think it's supposed to get up to like 97 or something today as I'm filming, and our little 1930s house does not handle heat well. We do not stay cool. We don't have AC in our house, minus a few window ACs and fans, so it can get pretty warm. So I'm feeling a little warm today, so you won't see me modeling today's finished object, but maybe in a future episode I will be able to show it off for you better. So like I said, today's episode is primarily knitting, and while I've been gone for 6 weeks, I really haven't been knitting that much, so this might not seem like a lot. Like I said, summer has kind of caught up and kept us kind of busy with other projects. So let's just jump right in with a finished object, which I'm sure you can guess what it is if you've been following along. So I have finally completed my Zweig sweater. Here she is in all her glory. I actually have not blocked the sweater yet. I wove in the ends while I was at Black Sheep Gathering, and I actually wandered around in it a little bit at Black Sheep Gathering. Surprisingly, it was not that, the sweater wasn't that overly warm, even though it was a really warm summer day. I was running around in this and a pair of jean shorts for a little bit. But here she is. She doesn't really fit in the camera. I'm trying to as best as I can though. So this is my Zweig sweater, which is a pattern by Caitlin Hunter. And if you've been following along with the sweater, you'll know that we have done some ripping back and going forward and ripping back again to get this sweater to fit me the way that I wanted it to. And I'm really happy I did all the ripping back that I did, because I am super happy with how this sweater turned out. So in the last episode, I kind of chatted with you about how I was worried about there being some color blocking in the body of the sweater, because I had redone the yoke and then had just cut, so I still had the bottom half that I had already knitted up. And as I was getting going, after finishing the yoke and adding some inches, I wanted this to be a little bit longer than what the pattern called for. I was worried that I hadn't done a very good job of alternating my skeins. So instead of just alternating 2 skeins, I ended up alternating 3 skeins. And I'm so happy I did. It is much more even. The color is more dispersed. And it brought over some of the darker shade onto the sleeves as well. If you don't know the story of the yarn and why I was heavily alternating and ended up alternating 3 skeins instead of just 2, I had originally purchased my original set of skeins. Again, I don't remember how many skeins I originally purchased, if it was 2 main color and 1 of the contrasting, or if it was 3, but I actually requested the dyer Christina of Teal Knits. I reached out to see if she would be willing to dye some more skeins. Originally it was just to see if she had more of that color. She didn't, but she offered to dye the same color, but the dye lots were extremely different. The original that I had purchased was super dark, and then the new, the second dye lot essentially that she did for me and my mom personally was a lot lighter. but I'm really happy with how the color is dispersed throughout the sweater. I don't know how well you can see or what the lighting is showing you, but I hope you can kind of see. I hadn't wanted it to have as much variegation as it does, but again, working with what I had, I'm really happy I alternated skeins the way I did to disperse the color variation throughout the sweater. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about with this sweater? So one of the reasons I had gone back on the yoke, if you don't remember, is because my tension was too tight here on the yoke and it made this bubbling effect up here on the main color that you start with. While I mostly resolved that, I still have a little bit of bubbling on the back. So it's more towards the back, and I'm thinking it has something to do with the short row shaping. So either I have not been doing my short rows correctly, or my tension for short rows is off, or there's something going on, because it's really focused on the back and it kind of puffs up. I'm hoping once I block it, that'll kind of even out a bit better. I don't know if it will. But it's a lot better. I do still sometimes feel like I have to pull down the shoulders a little bit to kind of stretch it out. In the model of the pattern, the neck to me seems like it's much more like, not a true boat neck, but it's more stretched out, the opening, and mine doesn't seem to be that way. So I don't know, maybe it's my tension that's off. But anyways, I didn't do any big modifications, though I did knit the sweater longer. So I knit the body, I think it was 2 inches longer, because when I had done the first run through of the body before I ripped it all apart, I wasn't super happy with how it was hitting me. I wanted it a little bit longer. So I went ahead and knit it, I think 2 inches longer, maybe 3. I think it was supposed to be 13 inches long of the main color, and I knit it to 15, but I could be wrong on that. And then on the sleeves, I knit the sleeves in the patterned, the X pattern. I knit this part an inch longer on both of the sleeves as well. I was just a little paranoid that it was going to be too short for some reason, and I really didn't need to do that. I could have just left it as it was written, but I think it works for this pattern because the pattern has these long ribbed cuffs, so it just makes it a little bit more slouchy and bunched up, which I think works well for this sweater. This is all of the yarn that I have left. So like I said, I was alternating 3 skeins. I only had 2 colors or 2 skeins left, and just a tiny ball and a medium sized ball left. This is yarn from Teal Torch Knits. It is her DK, and this color is that I use for the main body is High Queen Margo. And then the contrasting color, which I use for the yoke, is called Dangerously Happy, and it's a speckled yarn that has a similar shade of purple, some kind of blues and yellows, and I think it really turned out great. Like I said, this yarn was together in a little basket when I saw it, and it just spoke to me that it needed to be a Zweig sweater. This pattern is really easy, a lot of fun. I just whizzed through it once I got going on it. Like you may know, it was sitting languishing for a little bit, so I wasn't knitting on it, but I'm so happy that starting up this podcast again motivated me to pick it up and get it finished, because it's exactly what I thought it would be. Like I said, I really enjoyed knitting it. I would knit the pattern again. I originally, when I first had found the Zweig sweater and wanted to knit it, I originally was inspired by a version that was knitted solid, so there was not the contrasting color, it was all solid. And I think I would do that again. I think I would, if I found the right color, knit this in a solid version as well. So I may do that in the future. So that is my Zweig sweater. I will see if either I can get some B-roll of me wearing it so you can kind of see, or maybe in a future episode you'll get to see me wear it. So then that leads me on to my next project. I had no more projects in the works, so I have a new cast on. And in the last episode, you might remember that I was chatting about how I was looking to cast on a new sweater, and I wanted something that was really basic, both basic for easy knitting as well as basic staple wardrobe piece. And I showed you some yarn and talked a little bit about it, and all of that went out the window. Instead, I have cast on a not simple sweater. It definitely takes a little bit more of brain work because it's color work, and I wouldn't call it a staple. I mean, it's not a staple like having a black t-shirt staple, if you understand what I'm getting at. So this is a sweater that Instagram recommended to me. So we can all thank Instagram for this cast on. And that is this beautiful sweater. It's curling up because it's not quite, let's see, maybe if I hold it from this side. It's not any better. Okay, well, okay, there you go. Now you can see it. Okay, this is the back of the sweater. And this is the porcelain sweater, which is a pattern by Lindholm Simsu. I think that's how you say her name. I'm probably totally butchering that. It's a Scandinavian design that was released in December. And so how did I end up finding this pattern? Like I said, Instagram. I was just kind of scrolling through Instagram, as one does, and Instagram threw out some suggested posts, like it does if you're scrolling through your feed, and it happened to be of this sweater. And what I always do when I see a pattern on Instagram that I like, I take a screenshot, and then later I go through my screenshots and add them to my Ravelry page so that I can find them. Well, I scrolled maybe 3 or 4 posts further, and a second version of the sweater popped up. So I went to Ravelry, looked it up, and totally fell in love with the pattern, and here I am. So this pattern is partially worked flat, and I have to admit that I was really kind of a little bit turned off by the fact that there was part of it where the color work was going to be knit flat, because I've always heard like not very positive things about doing color work flat. So I was super intimidated. And at the same time, when I looked through the Ravelry project pages, there were so many people who were saying this was their first color work pattern ever, that they'd never done anything else before. So my mind's sitting there going, but I've always heard it's so hard, but all these beginners who've never done a color work pattern are doing it. So of course, obviously I went for it. And I will have to say, knitting color work flat, at least just 2 colors, is not as scary as I thought it would be. I was a lot more intimidated than was necessary. So how this pattern works is you knit the first color work chart, which is this pattern here, the kind of classic snowflake, I think is what this is, motif. So the front and the back are knit flat, then you join it, and then the rest of it is knit in the round. This pattern is a kind of boxy dropped shoulder sweater. So like I said, this is the back. I have this much started on the front, so it's not really that interesting. I'm playing Major Yarn Chicken again with this pattern. I don't know why I do this to myself, but I'm playing Major Yarn Chicken. So I had a single skein of this beautiful orange. I would like it to focus so you can see. It is, I guess, a semi-solid orange. And it was dyed by a good friend of mine, Chelsea of Rock Creek Romneys. This is yarn from her flock of Romney sheep. And it is a 3-ply DK, I believe. I'm treating it as a DK. And then I am using, for the main color, I am using this white yarn, which is from my flock of Romney sheep. And it's just a flock blend, so it has 3 to 5 fleeces that I don't remember whose fleeces are in the batch. It's a 2-ply, so that's kind of thrown off a little bit my gauge, I think, but I'm hoping at the same time it's going to balance out my tightness of my color work gauge. So the pattern calls for a fingering weight yarn held with a mohair lace weight yarn, and I'm not doing that. Both of these skeins, especially the Rock Creek Romney skein, have a really nice halo already, and I don't know if it shows up on screen at all, if you can see it. Of course, this is just in the ball. But so I didn't feel like it was necessary. Plus, I don't really keep mohair on hand. I've never done a pattern with mohair and another yarn held double. So I don't have it in my stash, and I didn't really want to go out and specifically purchase it. So I think, though, that it's going to work out. Let's see if you can see. And there were a lot of patterns or versions of the pattern that they left out the mohair or were knitting with a way heavier yarn. So I did do a gauge swatch. I don't always do gauge swatches, and I did meet gauge with the main color. My row gauge is off, so we'll see how that affects the pattern. My stitch gauge was on point, but my row gauge was off. Now with the contrasting color, I was about maybe half an inch off, so I'm hoping that might help me out with my color work tightness. We're gonna see how it goes. But like I said, this is all I have, and it's always really hard to tell on pattern pages and just patterns in general how much of a skein you need. They might tell you 1 skein of XYZ yarn, and but they don't tell you, do you use 90% of it? Do you use 50% of it? And so, you know, when you look at a pattern and sizes 1 through 4 are all needing 1 skein, it's like, how much do you use? So we'll see. I might get myself into a rock and a hard place with this. Let's see, anything else I want to say? I am knitting size 4 for this, I think, and that'll give me, I think that'll end up giving me 10 inches of positive ease. The pattern calls for, suggests 6 to 8, the model was wearing 10. So just how the sizes fell, 10 was the best fit for me. Let's see, I think that's all I have to say. Like I said, knitting flat, color work, not as hard as I thought. It's more of inconvenient, maybe a little annoying, awkward. For those of you who like floats, here are my floats. I am not a perfectionist on my floats. There are parts where I probably should have caught my floats and I didn't, but there she is. So yeah, that is the new pattern that I am working on. So that wraps up all of my knitting content, all of my crafting content, I guess, really. And we will move on to some acquisitions. So in June was Black Sheep Gathering, and so I bought myself some more yarn to add to my collection of Shetland, my Shetland sweater that I have been telling you guys about. And I got myself 3 new skeins to add to my collection. And so I guess I'll show you the new skeins. So here are my 3 new skeins. Oops, I'm losing skeins. And they are all natural shades. So these are exactly as they came off the sheep. So here they are. So we have a black, a medium brown, and a light brown. And these are all from Pleasant Prairie Shetlands. They're out of Spokane, Washington. So focus. There you go. These skeins don't have names or colors attached to them. They're all 200-yard skeins, and I have a mix of fingering and sport in here. The sport weight was close enough to fingering that I think I can get away with it, and I only need like 115 yards for each of the colors, so I'm probably going to split this one in half and over dye it with a color to add, because I am needing 10 contrasting colors and 1 main color. So I now have, I dropped all my skeins. This is, let's see if I can hold these all so you can kind of see where I'm at. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's see. All right. So this is kind of where I'm at with my colors. I think I'm going to need some more dyed colors, obviously, but I'm also thinking I'm going to be on the lookout for an oatmeal, so something in between the white and the lightest brown, and then I will split the oatmeal and over dye the oatmeal as well. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this skein in the mix. It's not as well evenly spun, and I'm worried it'll affect the gauge. It also is more of the color I wanted to do for the main body. So I'm not sure if I will keep this one in the mix or if I'll just kind of throw it in my stash and pick out a different color instead. So that would give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so I just pretty much need 1 more contrasting color skein that I can split in half and over dye, and then over dye the 2 that I want. I don't know what colors to over dye and add, because we've got, these are the 3 dyed colors that I have that we've talked about before. So I'm kind of trying to decide what would work. I was kind of thinking maybe a more gold yellow. This one, one I'm trying to show you, the yellow one there, has a tendency to be a chartreuse, more of a greeny tone. So I'm thinking maybe more of a true gold. But I'm not sure. So any suggestions on other colors? Obviously I'm going with kind of an autumnal color palette here, so I'm not really sure what I should add as far as those 2 over dyed colors. So that is it for acquisitions and knitting. I'm going to include clips here at the end of Black Sheep Gathering for you to enjoy. Like I said, there's going to be clips, I think it's about a 3 or 5 minute clip of the Supreme selection, and then I think I have some clips from the ladies lead and just around the event. and whatnot. So I hope you enjoy that. Thank you so much for joining me again. I am looking forward to seeing you guys very soon. I will try to be closer to my 3-week schedule that I was trying to go for earlier. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and if you enjoyed today's video, feel free to give me a comment. Tell me what you've been working on. I had some really good comments on last video about what everyone was working on. Like the video, subscribe if you would like to see more content from me. You can find me on social media as Covered Bridge Farm on Facebook and Instagram, and on Ravelry I am Woolly Ramblings, like I am here. So I will see you next time.